Good girl. So this is Halo. She is a yearling Percheron filly. She's actually a year and almost 3 months. She's already 16 hands, so she's not going to be a small one, huh? We're going to go ahead and go through our in-hand yields. And these are important in initially establishing your whip communication with the horse, getting your basic verbal cues down. Your horse should already be able to lead at this point. And we're going to, hi. And we're going to go ahead and just move her shoulders and her hips around and be sure all of that is established. Huh. So what we're looking for initially, I'll often throw my lead rope up over the neck. What we're looking for initially is for her to have self-carriage, which means she can stand still in balance. Well, self-carriage means being able to be in balance, but in this case it's standing still and not moving her feet, even if her head moves a little bit. So we're going to start out with just taking the line, engaging her nose a little bit. Oh, feet moved. So we're going to just hold this for a second. And we're going to wait for her to stop her feet and yield the nose. There we go. Okay. Hey, babes. Whoop. So she needs to be able to, whoop, hey, stand still. Whoop. And this is classic baby horse stuff. She hasn't been lunged or anything. I just pulled her out from breakfast. So, whoop. So stand still. Yes, good girl. And yield the nose without moving the feet. That's our baseline. Because when we're doing this other stuff, she needs to be able to move her nose left or right. And where her nose is isn't necessarily where her body's going to go. We might ask her to look left and yield out to the right. We might ask her to look left and come in. We might ask her to look left and move her shoulders. We might ask her to look left and yield her hips. So I want to be able to just ask for her nose, yes, good girl, without her feet getting all weird. So that was much better. So now we have a slight, hey, bend to the left. And if she's standing still, we're going to go ahead and do our first yield, which is going to be yielding the hip. And obviously we're having a little hard time standing still, and that's okay because we're a baby. Whoop. Whoop. Hey. Whoa. Come on, Halo. All right. Whoa. All right, so we have our left yield, or our left nose yield here. Stand. And I do want to be sure she's standing still before I ask her feet to move. In this instance. All right, little nose. Good girl. Halo, over. Yes, good girl. Good girl. And the reason I want her standing still first is I want to have that immobility established. You know, halt, standing still is the most important gait when you're driving. And if she can't stand still, you're going to have a hard time with everything else. So, I know. There's the nose. Over. Good girl. And that's all I'm really looking for. I just want one step in which her hip moves over and she crosses those legs. Huh. Come over here. So we're going to do that whoop one more time. So when I ask her to do this, the softest thing I can do is use my voice. I'm going to say the word over. Preferably I'll say her name and then the command, and that's the ideal is name, command, physical reinforcement as necessary. So nose, thank you. Whoop. Stand. Just your nose, babes. Yeah, I know, now you're in my space. Hey, come on. Thank you. Halo, over. And if she yields from that, awesome. If she didn't yield from that, I would have, tapped the air a couple times. If she didn't yield from that, I would have started tapping her, and it'd be kind of just, whoop, in a steady rhythm. Woo. Woo. Thank you. Good girl. And slowly increasing the pressure until she went. Now, if I asked and she didn't do the right thing, I would maintain my same level, because if your animal is offering you something, even if it's not the right thing, it's an effort. Huh, baby pest. I need to do your other side. Halo, over. Yep. Over. There we go. Okay. Let's get you over here. So again, she's already flexed. Halo, over. Yep. Almost. There we go. Good girl. So if we're at the beginning baby stages, when she does yield, I'll just basically rub where, if I had to tap it, I'd basically just rub where I was at until she stops moving her feet. I usually give them 2 to 3 steps in order to put themselves back together after the yield. So if I asked her to yield that hip, she would step here, right? Those legs would be crossed. I don't expect her to stand that way. So she'll give me 1 step, and then there'll be 2 to 3 more for her to rearrange her legs and put herself back in position. So I'm not gonna go, she steps here and go, whoa, and make her stop, because that's not fair to her. She needs to be able to get herself back in balance. Halo. Stand. Little nose. Whoop. Yes, good girl. Stand. Wait. Just looking. Just need your nose. Just good. Whoop. So she's having a little hard time with the self-carriage part here, and that's okay. Good girl. Good. Halo, over. Yes. Good. So there, she only needed 2 steps to balance herself. Perfect. Now, if you note her front end, she is standing a little cattywampus. If she were to fix that, I wouldn't mind. But she just did the side step, squared herself back up behind, and that's all good. So that's yielding the haunches. Yielding the haunches is the easiest of these yields that they can do. It's so much easier for them to look and then yield their hip away than doing any of these other ones. So that's usually where we start with. It just gives us a good foundation for the next things that we're going to ask her to do. The next easiest one is moving her shoulders towards her nose. So she's already looking, she's staring at something over there. Whoop. And then we get distracted because we're a baby. I just organize her back over here again. Whoop. So yielding the shoulders away from me, I'm going to I might lightly rest my fingers on her halter here, get her nose looking just slightly away from me, and then it'll be yielding the shoulders. So here we're going to step G, and if I'm using a dressage whip, if I'm using a dressage whip, sometimes I'll tap with just the butt of the whip because it's a little bit more rigid, or I'll tap here. It depends on the individual horse. Partially it depends on their size. For her shoulders so far up here, I'd have to really reach up here to tap it with the lash portion. So I'm just going to use the butt of the whip here. All right, Halo. Step G. Yes, good girl. So she gave me a step, rub her to a stop, Halo, step G. Whoop. Good girl. Halo, step G. Hey, easy. Halo. G. There you go. Good girl. Whoop. Whoop. Yep, back up. So on the shoulder yield, at the very start, you may get a little bit more of a forward step, and that's fine. The grand plan ideal is that she kind of pivots on her hind end, but at this stage, so long as she's taking a step towards her midline, I'm going to be happy with that. So I use G for right and Ha for left. It's the whole draft horse background thing. So she's pretty much just coming off of my word and body position, which is great. Some horses you'll actually have to, touch them with the stick, and that's okay. Yeah. Eventually, they should understand the words. So now we're gonna go ha. Yes, whoop. Whoop. Good girl. I know. Step hop. Yes, woo. Good girl. So again, that 2 to 3 steps. Whoop. Before stillness. I know, you got buggies pestering your face. I should have put fly spray on you, huh? Step hop. Whoop. Whoop. Good girl. Step hop. Yes. Whoop. Good. So a couple of things that could happen with yielding the shoulders. If she goes backwards too much, that tells me that I'm probably a little too far forward. So depending on your individual horse will depend on where exactly you're standing for this. Back up. Some will require you to be more up here. Some, you'll be almost back here behind their shoulder because of their sensitivity to your body location. You know, some are more naturally forward thinking, so they are gonna naturally wanna take that step forward. Some are gonna wanna take that step back. And at this stage, we are looking for that forward step. We don't want her stepping behind herself here. And there's some specific exercises where you might ask your horse for that move, but here, we don't want that. We want her stepping forward and across. And again, if she at least steps forward and towards her midline, we're gonna be happy with that. So the next one is the next hardest here, and that's bending her towards me and yielding her shoulders out. I know, you're so itchy. So for that, I'm gonna throw my slack over here. I know. We're gonna get the nose. Whoop. And again, she's having a rough time with self-carriage today, and that's okay, huh? She's got a little bit of flexion towards me, and we really don't want more than just that. And I know you're offering, and that's a good thing, but not what I need right now. So she really doesn't need to bend her nose past her point of shoulder. So I guess if I were to demonstrate here, so this is straight, slight flexion. Her point of shoulder's here. Her nose doesn't need to go past this point, or point of shoulder past this point. Once we go past the point of shoulder, the movement is no longer biomechanically sound. We want our horse to be evenly bent from nose to tail, whoop, which means that we can't bend the neck more than the thorax can bend. Rib cage doesn't have a lot of flexion in here, and her neck can bend a lot. But when we're doing these movements, we want to be sure that her neck isn't bending more than her rib cage can. Huh. And you know, you're going to have a flexible horse who's going to overbend a little bit. I'm just saying that you don't want to encourage that. If it happens, it happens. You're going to eventually work towards better straightness and stability in your horse's posture. But for the moment, you know, we want at least slight flexion. If they give you too much, we just kind of ignore it and carry on. Huh. Yeah, I'm not going to just push your nose back out. All right. So yielding the shoulders. Nose toward. Let her find her stability here. Nose towards me slightly. She's bending too much, and we're going to kind of just ignore that. Halo out. Okay, out. Yes, good girl. So same deal as yielding the shoulders, woo, towards the bend. I may use the butt of my whip. I may use the lash of it. Just kind of depends. A little bit is kind of a mix between mood and individual horse, huh? Depending on how big or small they are. All right, Halo, little nose, out. Not so far. There we go, good. So if your horse takes a big old honking step forward, little tug on the halter or reins, depending on what you're using, to say not so forward and redirect them out. And again, if she's offering and doing the thing, I am not going to increase my pressure. Now I may, if she were to take a big old step towards me, I may give her a slight tap and say, hey, this is my space, don't enter it. But for the most part, if she's making an attempt, I've given her a cue and she's trying to do a thing, I'm not going to increase the volume of my aid. Halo, out. Yes, good girl. And just like with the shoulder moving towards the bend, we are just looking for that little bit of leg towards the midline at the start. Eventually you can ask for more, but at the start we're just looking for that general direction. Halo. Out. There we go. Good girl. So when you're ready to, you can combine some of these, get different things like side passes. So I could ask her, Halo, over, and then out. Yep. Out. Over. Out. And get a little bit of a side pass going. So I've never actually asked her to do that, but we have a start there. We need to do your other side, don't we? Over. Yep. Over. Not so forward. Not so forward. Thank you. Step G. Ha. Sorry, babe. Ha. And over. Woo. Woo. Hey. Back. Thank you. So again, little nose towards me. Halo, out. Out. Thank you. Good girl. So again, we got a little overbent, and that's okay. Our goal is going to be a little straighter in her body. But we're a baby. Woo. Especially one that's having a hard time standing still and carrying herself. Yeah. Here, let's back up. Well, there's the nose. Halo, out. Yep, good girl. Out. Hey, not so far. There we go, good. So those are the 3 basic yields. She's not really ready to do the 4th one yet, but I will talk about it briefly here. Come here, Halo. Whoop. So the 4th yield is the hardest one. We're not really going to get it today out of her, but just as a refresher, the first one is we're yielding the hip away from the bend, so she's in this position and her butt's moving that way. The second one is moving the shoulder towards the bend, so we're going to move this shoulder and she's going to be looking towards the direction we're moving it. The next hardest one is yielding the shoulder away from the bend like that. Woo. Woo. And we can just hold it until you stop. Thank you. And then the top difficulty is yielding the hip towards the bend. So whoop. Those who are familiar with the dressage movements would know ravers and travers, or haunches in, haunches out. And basically it's asking her to, well, haunches in, haunches out, travers, renvers, half pass. It's all basically the same movement depending on the orientation. But basically it's moving the hip towards the bend. So if I were to refresh this in my, I know, baby pissed. Refresh this in my own body, if we're bent this way, we've got yield the hip out away from the bend. We've got move the shoulder towards the bend. We have moving the shoulder away from the bend. And then the final one is moving the hip towards the bend. So this type of a movement here. And that's the hardest one for them. Not everybody's going to ask this of their horses, but I feel it's important, especially when you're driving, because when you're in a vehicle, you have the shafts, and your horse has to basically do a working pirouette in order to pivot the vehicle. In order to make that tightest turn that you can, whether it's in a cart or a four-wheeler, your horse has to move its body towards the bend on a small circle. So Halo's going to be introduced to yielding her haunches towards the bend. And I will note at the start, she's not going to be bending in the direction that I'm asking her to go. And that's okay. No, you're not. But we're going to use the fence here to our advantage. It's going to help us limit where she's wandering off to. and give us a chance to have a more focused use of our cues. So at this point, she should be able to yield her haunches, yield her shoulders. Haunches, she should be yielding away from the bend. Shoulders, she should be able to yield both towards and away from the bend. And we're gonna set her up here parallel to the fence. Whoop. So what word you choose to use here depends. I've gotten in the habit of using the term park it because when I'm up on a mounting block, I'll tell them to park it, and this helps swing the hip towards you. And I've had some clients that use the term Uber, or they also use the word over. Just keep in mind that the more specific you can be with your word, the better it is, and the more specificity you have. Can you drop it? All right. So for here, we're going to start out with just kind of having her nose straight. She's not going to understand this at the start, and that's okay. But I'm going to give my finished body position here. Whoop. Stand still. Halo. Park it. And just bring this over. Park it. And touch that hip. Yes, good girl. So again, she is bent away from the bend at the moment, but this is building. It's getting me the tools that I need to actually do what I want to do. So, halo, park it. Yep. Yes, good girl. Good job. So what we're looking for at this stage is just for that hip to come to the inside off the rail. Now, if you have a horse that's done a lot of yielding the hip away, they're going to be really confused by this. They may try to go all sorts of different directions until they finally stumble upon the right one. Again, if your horse is trying, stick with it, wait it out, stay the same pressure until they happen upon the correct thing. All right, Halo, park it. Not in my face. Yep. Yes, good girl. All right, we'll do that from the other direction so we can see the butt. So again, I know you can't see me, but hopefully you can see what I'm gonna do with the stick here, and you can see the movement in the hind end. So to start with, you may have her bend away from you just a little bit, just to make it easier on your horse. Ultimately, I want her bent towards me in doing this, but that's probably a few weeks, months down the line. So, Halo, park it. Bring the stick up and over. Touch that outside hip. She's thinking. Almost. Yes, good girl. Good job. Yes. So we'll do that again. Halo, park it. So my stick starts out here. Gonna bring it up and over. She's trying, so I'm not gonna actually touch her. Yes, good girl. Good girl. One more? Okay. Halo, park it. Yes, good girl. Good girl. I will note on a horse who's a little bit more pushy, just watch the shoulders and what they're doing. She is a little on the pushy side, aren't you? So she's gonna find that answer a lot quicker than a horse who's very respectful of your space, because a horse who's more respectful of your space is gonna look for a way to not move into you first before they finally yield away from the pressure you're applying. Huh, Halo? It's a good girl. That wasn't bad for a first time, babies. Huh. All right, we're gonna lunge you for a minute and call you good.